Close your eyes for a moment. Just one breath. Feel the rise of your chest, the gentle fall. Now consider this: the hand resting on your lap, the chair beneath you, the air filling your lungs. None of it is solid. Not truly. Not at the deepest level that physics can reach. Not at the deepest level that the Buddha ever pointed toward. What you call your body is almost entirely empty space. The atoms that compose your skin, your bones, your heart, they are more than 99.9% nothing. If you removed all the empty space from every atom in every human being on Earth, the remaining matter would fit inside a single sugar cube. And yet, here you are, breathing, listening, feeling the weight of something beneath you that science itself says is mostly void. This is not a contradiction. This is the mystery. And tonight, we are going to walk directly into its center. Welcome to this sanctuary. This is a place where ancient stillness meets the frontier of human knowledge, where the whispered insights of monks sitting beneath forest canopies 2,000 years ago find their echo in the equations scrawled on the chalkboards of modern laboratories. If these words feel like a homecoming, if they settle something restless inside you, then I want to invite you to stay. To continue healing your body and soul through these ancient teachings, I invite you to join our path by subscribing to this sanctuary. Let this be a place you return to when the noise of the world becomes too loud and the longing for depth becomes impossible to ignore. Tonight, we are exploring one of the most extraordinary convergences in the history of human understanding, the meeting point between quantum physics and Buddhist emptiness, between what the Buddha called Śūnyatā and what physicists discovered when they split matter open and found not a foundation, but a shimmering web of relationships. Let us begin with what the Buddha saw. Over 2,500 years ago, sitting in stillness beneath the Bodhi tree, the Buddha turned the full power of his attention inward. He did not use a telescope. He did not use a particle accelerator. He used the one instrument that every human being carries, awareness itself. And what he found, after penetrating layer after layer of experience, was this: nothing he observed had any independent, permanent existence. Not his body, not his feelings, not his thoughts, not even the awareness observing them. Everything he encountered was arising in dependence upon something else. Everything was empty of a separate self. This is the teaching of Śūnyatā, emptiness, and it is perhaps the most misunderstood word in all of Buddhist philosophy. Because when we hear empty, we imagine a void, a blank, a cold and lifeless negation of everything we know and love. But that is not what the Buddha meant, not even close. Emptiness, in the Buddhist sense, means that nothing possesses an inherent, standalone nature. Everything you see, touch, hear, or think exists only in relationship. A wave cannot exist without the ocean. A flame cannot exist without fuel and air. Your own heartbeat cannot exist without the billions of years of cosmic evolution that produce the iron in your blood, forged inside dying stars. You are not separate from the universe. You are the universe, looking at itself through a particular arrangement of conditions that will never occur again in exactly this way. The great Indian philosopher Nagarjuna, writing in the 2nd century, took this insight further than anyone before him. He demonstrated through rigorous logic that if anything existed independently, by its own nature, it could never change. It could never interact. It could never come into being or pass away. The very fact that things change is proof that they are empty of fixed essence. He wrote that emptiness itself is not a thing. It is not a substance hiding behind the surface of reality. It is simply the way things are. interdependent, relational, endlessly co-arising. Now pause. Take a breath. Feel the air entering your nostrils, cool and thin. Feel it warming inside your chest. Notice how even this single breath depends on the trees that release the oxygen, the sunlight that fed those trees, the gravity that holds this atmosphere around our small blue planet. One breath, and the entire cosmos is implicated. Now let us cross the bridge into modern physics and see what the scientists found when they opened the same door from the other side. In the early 20th century, physicists began to investigate the smallest building blocks of matter. They expected to find tiny solid particles, miniature billiard balls, the ultimate foundation upon which all reality is built. What they found instead shattered every assumption they carried. At the quantum level, particles do not behave like objects. They behave like possibilities. An electron, before it is measured, does not sit in a definite place. It exists in what physicists call a superposition, a cloud of potential locations, all equally real, none of them actual until the moment of observation. This is not a metaphor. This is the result of decades of carefully repeated experiments. The double-slit experiment, first performed in the early 1800s and refined throughout the 20th century, showed that a single particle can behave as both a wave and a particle, depending on whether it is being observed. When no one is watching, the particle passes through both slits simultaneously, interfering with itself like a ripple in water. When a detector is placed at the slits, the particle suddenly behaves as though it chose one path. Reality, at its most fundamental level, seems to be participatory. It does not exist in a fixed way independent of observation. It arises in relationship, and in the meeting between observer and observed. Does this sound familiar? The Buddha said, "In dependence upon this, that arises." The physicist says, the properties of a particle are not defined until interaction occurs. The language differs. The mathematics differs. But the underlying revelation is remarkably similar. Nothing exists by itself. Everything comes into being through relationship. Werner Heisenberg, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, expressed this with what became known as the uncertainty principle. You cannot simultaneously know both the exact position and the exact momentum of a particle. The more precisely you measure one, the more the other slips away. This is not a limitation of our instruments. It is a fundamental feature of nature itself. Reality resists being pinned down into a single, fixed description, and here we find another echo of emptiness. The Buddhist teaching that no phenomenon has a single, definable essence. That the closer you look, the more the boundaries dissolve, and what remains is a web of mutual dependence stretching in every direction. Now let us go deeper still, into the field. Quantum field theory, the framework that underlies modern particle physics, tells us that particles are not fundamental. They are excitations, temporary vibrations in underlying fields that pervade all of space. An electron is not a tiny ball, it is a ripple in the electron field. A photon is a ripple in the electromagnetic field. What we call matter is not substance. It is pattern. It is movement. It is energy momentarily taking shape before dissolving back into the field from which it arose. The Buddha used a strikingly similar image over 2 millennia ago. He compared all phenomena to foam on the surface of a river, arising for a moment, appearing solid, then vanishing without a trace. He said that form is like foam, feelings like bubbles, perceptions like mirages, mental formations like a plantain trunk, hollow when you cut it open, and consciousness like a magic show, vivid, but ultimately without substance. This is not the denial of experience. It is the deepest possible honesty about what experience actually is. Luminous, vivid, undeniable. And yet, when you search for its core, you find only more relationships, more conditions, more arising and passing away. Take a moment now. Feel your feet against the floor or the ground beneath you. Notice the pressure, the texture, the subtle warmth, when all of this is real at the level of experience. Buddhism never denies this. It simply asks you to look deeper, to notice that even this sensation of solidity is a construction, a collaboration between nerve endings, electrical signals, brain patterns, and the atoms in the floor that are themselves mostly empty space. Vibrating at frequencies your senses interpret as solid. You are experiencing the universe's creative act in real time, not as a spectator, as a participant. This brings us to one of the most profound parallels of all. The concept of entanglement. In quantum physics, two particles that have interacted become entangled. Once entangled, measuring the state of one particle instantly determines the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. This connection is not transmitted through space, and it does not travel at any speed. It simply is. As though the two particles, despite appearing separate, are expressions of a single underlying reality. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance. He was deeply uncomfortable with it. And yet, experiment after experiment has confirmed it. Entanglement is real. Separation at the quantum level is an illusion. The Buddhist tradition arrived at this same insight through contemplation rather than calculation. The teaching of Pratyasamutpada, dependent origination, reveals that all phenomena are entangled. Not just particles, but thoughts, emotions, actions, lives, worlds. Touch one strand of the web, and every other strand responds. Your anger does not stay contained within your skull. It ripples outward into your words, your family, your community. Your kindness does the same. Nothing is isolated. Nothing acts alone. The Huayan school of Chinese Buddhism expressed this through the beautiful image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast net stretching infinitely in all directions. At every node of the net hangs a jewel, and in every jewel, every other jewel is reflected. Each point contains the whole. Each part expresses the totality. This is not poetry, or rather, it is poetry that quantum physics has begun to verify. Now, we must address the place where science and Buddhism diverge, because intellectual honesty demands it. Science studies the external world through measurement, prediction, and mathematical models. Buddhism studies the internal world through direct contemplation, ethical practice, and meditative absorption. The physicist asks, how does matter behave? The monk asks, how does the mind that observes matter behave, and can it be freed from suffering? These are different questions, and they lead to different kinds of knowledge. Science can tell you that the observer affects the observed. Buddhism can teach you how to become a wiser, more compassionate observer. The convergence between the two is not a proof that one validates the other. It is an invitation to hold both ways of knowing with humility and wonder. To recognize that the universe reveals different aspects of itself, depending on the question you bring to it. The great physicist Niels Bohr seemed to sense this. He chose the yin and yang symbol for his coat of arms, and beneath it placed the Latin motto, Contraria sunt complementa. Opposites are complementary. He understood that reality cannot be captured by a single description. It requires multiple, sometimes paradoxical perspectives, held together in the same open awareness. This is precisely what the Buddha taught. The middle way. Not clinging to existence, not clinging to non-existence. Not insisting on a fixed reality, not denying that experience is vivid and meaningful. Walking the razor's edge between the two, where true understanding lives. And here is where all of this becomes personal, where it leaves the chalkboard and the meditation cushion and enters the living texture of your daily life. If nothing is solid, if reality is relational, if your very atoms are borrowed from ancient stars and will return to the cosmos when you are gone, then what are you clinging to? That grudge you carry. Against whom is it actually held, if neither you nor they possess a fixed self? That fear of loss. What exactly can be lost if everything is already in motion, already transforming, already on its way somewhere else? This is not nihilism. This is liberation. When you see clearly that nothing was ever permanently yours, you do not lose the world. You receive it fully for the first time. Because now you are not grasping. You are simply present, open, awake. Close your eyes again, just for a breath or two. Feel the aliveness in your hands, the subtle pulse in your fingertips. That pulse is the universe, pulsing. Those atoms in your blood were forged in the nuclear fires of stars that died billions of years before this planet formed. You are stardust, temporarily arranged into someone who can wonder about stardust. And the emptiness the Buddha spoke of is not the absence of this wonder. It is the very condition that makes wonder possible. Because if things were fixed, if reality were solid and permanent, there would be nothing to discover. No mystery, no depth, no possibility of awakening. Emptiness is fullness. It is the pregnant silence from which all music arises. It is the blank canvas that makes every painting possible. It is the space between your thoughts where insight, unbidden and luminous, suddenly appears. The quantum vacuum, which physicists describe as the ground state of all fields, is not truly empty either. It seethes with virtual particles, flickering in and out of existence in durations too brief to measure. Even the void is creative. Even nothing is doing something. Even silence hums. Sit with this, not as an idea, but as a felt experience. Right now, in this moment, you are a pattern of energy, temporarily coherent, miraculously aware, held together by forces you did not create and cannot fully control. And this is not a reason for despair. It is the deepest possible cause for awe. The Buddha's final instruction was simple. All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence. He did not say, figure out the answer. He said, keep looking. Keep practicing. Keep waking up. And the great physicists, when they are honest, say something remarkably similar. Richard Feynman once wrote that the first principle of science is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. Both traditions ask for the same thing: radical honesty about what is actually here, a willingness to let go of what you thought you knew, and the courage to stand in the open space that remains. You do not need to choose between science and spirituality. You do not need to abandon the laboratory to sit on a cushion or leave the cushion to enter the laboratory. Both are lanterns in the same darkness. Both are fingers pointing at the same moon. What matters is that you look, that you keep looking, that you do not turn away when what you find is stranger, more beautiful, and more empty than you ever imagined. The universe is not a thing. It is a happening, and you are not a spectator. You are part of the happening itself. Take one more breath. Let it be slow. Let it remind you that even the simplest act, the drawing of air into your lungs, connects you to everything that has ever existed and everything that ever will. You are not separate. You never were. The particles knew this before we did. The Buddha knew it before the particles told us. And now perhaps, in the quiet of this moment, you are beginning to know it too. Let this knowing settle, not in the mind, in the body, in the stillness beneath the thoughts, in the space where questions dissolve and only presence remains. This is the meeting place. This is where the equation and the sutra point to the same wordless truth. This is where emptiness and fullness are revealed to be the same. Rest here, even if only for a moment, because this moment, this breath, this awareness is the universe waking up to itself. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful experiment of all.